Now back live to this year's White House Correspondents' Dinner. Guests are now eating, and the speaking program will begin around 9:30 p.m. Eastern. You'll hear from President Bush, as well as comedian Drew Carey. Now a brief look at planning for this year's dinner, the 88th annual, with Julie Whiston, who's the executive director of the Correspondents Association.
Julia Whiston, as the executive director for the White House Correspondents Association, what's your job tonight?
Tonight is probably the easiest part of the dinner, since it's ready to happen and everybody's in the room, but to get 2,700 people, keep them happy, get them tickets, that's been, a little bit of a challenge.
Who's on the guest list tonight, and who will be where?
Well, at the head table, we have the president and the vice president and their wives, our entire board, a 9-member board, Ari Fleischer, and our comedian Drew Carey. Then in the room, tables have been purchased by our members, and they in turn invite guests.
And among those guests, who are the notables?
The notables come in several categories. We have most of the White House senior staff, most of the cabinet, some members of Congress, quite a few, some ambassadors, and then a category we call the special guests, which the public seems to be most interested in. Those would be Glenn Close. Is that the category you're interested in? Raquel Welch. We have most of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit models. We have, and those guests are from PBS, Bloomberg. We have Ozzy Osbourne, which you've probably heard about, was invited by Greta Van Susteren of Fox News. Tell me who else.
Well, how did all of this come about? How did a dinner that was first organized by the White House Correspondents evolve into something like this?
I think it started when members of the press became a little bit interested in Hollywood, but when Hollywood became most interested in the dealings in Washington. And this administration, as well as the last, have had a lot of friends in Hollywood, and they like to attend and be part of this.
So for our audience watching tonight, what's the sense of the room? What's going on? What are people talking about? And what's happening outside the ballroom?
Well, the idea started with this dinner that members of the White House Correspondents would invite their sources and enjoy dinner with them and have some time to really get to know their sources a little bit better. It can be hard to do in a ballroom that's this packed, and people do. We have a program 70 pages long with everybody in it alphabetically and with their table number, so people decide who they want to see and try to get there. And outside the room, it's fairly calm.
And how much planning goes into this?
It takes about a year. We'll start with next year's dinner right after this one.
Why so much work?
We have some very important people in the room, and people invite them well in advance because of everybody's busy schedules.
Julia Whiston, thank you.
Thank you.
Julia Whiston, Executive Director of the White House Correspondents Association. And we're back live to the ballroom of the Hilton, Washington and Towers at tonight's White House Correspondents' Dinner. At around 9:30 p.m. Eastern, we'll show you live coverage of the speaking portion of this event. We're looking at some pictures now of the head table at the Hilton. We'll have remarks by President Bush at 9:30 and comedian Drew Carey. Now we're continuing to show some of the speeches from previous dinners. Next, former President Ronald Reagan's remarks at his final Correspondents' Dinner in 1988. He's followed by former President Bush from the 1989 dinner, and later Bill Clinton from 2000. Now that speech by Ronald Reagan. This is just under 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please. Thank you all, and I'm delighted to be here. My, what a crowd. Looks like the index of Larry Speak's book. It's good to see Norm Sandler and your incoming president, Jerry O'Leary. In his book, Larry said that Jerry used to fill his coat pockets with pastry. Jerry denies it. Earlier tonight, just to be safe, I told him, keep his hands off my dinner roll. Larry also said that preparing me for a press conference was like reinventing the wheel. It's not true. I was around when the wheel was invented, and it was easier. But even Howard Baker's writing a book about me. It's called 3 by 5, The Measure of a Presidency. Mike Devers, in his book, said that I had a short attention span. Well, I was going to reply to that, but oh, what the hell, let's move on to something else. Now, I forgot to acknowledge Yakov Smirnoff. I've heard him before, and he's a very funny man. And I just have an idea here. Why don't you and I have a little fun? How'd you like to go to the summit as my interpreter? But the media certainly have had a lot to report on lately. I thought it was extraordinary that Richard Nixon went on Meet the Press and spent an entire hour with Chris Wallace, Tom Brokaw, and John Chancellor. That should put an end to that talk that he's been punished enough. And of course, you've been reporting on the New York primary. I'm afraid that Dukakis' foreign policy views are a little too far left for me. He wants no U.S. military presence in Korea anymore, no U.S. military presence in Central America, and no U.S. military presence at the Pentagon. Dukakis got great news today, though, about the Jimmy Carter endorsement. He isn't getting it. George Bush is doing well. George has been a wonderful vice president, but nobody's perfect. I put him in charge of anti-terrorism, and the McLaughlin Group is still on the air. But with so much focus on the presidential election, I've been feeling a little lonely these days. I'm so desperate for attention, I almost considered holding a news conference. I've even had time to watch the Oscars. I was a little disappointed in that movie, The Last Emperor. I thought it was going to be about Don Regan. Of course, I still have lots of work here. There's that Panamanian business going on. One thing I can't figure, if the Congress wants to bring the Panamanian economy to its knees, why doesn't it just go down there and run it? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last White House Correspondents' dinner that I'll be attending. We've had our disagreements over the years, but the time I've spent with you has been very educational. I used to think the Fourth Estate was one of Walter Annenberg's homes. As my goodbye, I'm not going to stand up here and deliver one of those worn-out, sentimental homilies about the press and the presidency. Neither of us would believe it. A president may like members of the press personally, and I do. Jerry and Norm and Johanna and Lou and so many others of you. But a president institutionally seeks to wield power to accomplish his goals for the people. The press complicates the wielding of that power by using its own great power, and that makes for friction. Every president will try to use the press to his best advantage and to avoid those situations that aren't to his advantage. To do otherwise results in a diminution of his leadership powers. The press is not a weak sister that needs bracing. It has more freedom, more influence than ever in our history. The press can take care of itself quite nicely, and a president should be able to take care of himself as well. So what I hope my epitaph will be with the White House Correspondents, what every president's epitaph should be with the press, is this: he gave as good as he got. And that, I think, will make for a And that, I think, will make for a healthy press and a healthy presidency. And I think all that's left to say is to thank you for inviting me and thank you for your hospitality.